I wonder if you'll be able to hear the Outside Land performance going on in the background. Hello Internet, this is Olin from What I'm Listening To. As you probably saw last week, I made a video showing off a bunch of albums that were really impactful to me when I was a teenager in high school, and I wanted to continue with that trend this week by picking out a couple more albums that were just as impactful as last week's albums and show them off on another video. I was pretty sure this was going to happen because there were lots of albums I listened to when I was a young angsty teenager, but it's the perfect theme. We all have those bands or albums that we're a little embarrassed to admit that we liked back in the day, but you know, we were young and we were angsty, we didn't know what the hell we were doing, so we just turned to crappy music. Although this week, I'm not entirely embarrassed about some of the stuff I have here. There's some good things here, but again, I'll let you be the judge of it. So with all that being said, let's get started. The first album I have here, this is a Stone Temple Pilots Greatest Hits. Now, shamefully, me getting into this band involved buying a Greatest Hits album. I know that they're a legendary 90s grunge hard rock band, and as I've mentioned before, I got into rock music a little late. I have games like Rock Band and Guitar Hero to thank for getting me into this band. Each game that was put out, it seemed like they would add another Stone Temple Pilots song here and there, and it just got to the point where I liked a lot of what they showed and I wanted to get an album. And of course, because Stone Temple Pilots is such an established band, I just had no idea where to start. So when I found this album that had all the songs that I liked, it was a no-brainer. I had to pick it up. On a side note, I want to get a little more intimate with this vlog because last week's vlog I felt that I didn't tell enough stories of me being a teenager, and this one I actually want to dig down a little bit in there. So with this album, I distinctly remember being really depressed over a girl or several girls, I don't remember it, but being depressed over someone not really accepting feelings I had for them. And I remember going on long walks by myself and listening to this album. In particular, the songs Plush, Creep, and Interstate Love Songs just struck a chord with me.
Waiting on a Sunday afternoon for what I read between the lines. The lines.
There was something about the overall feel of those songs. They were very bittersweet. They just matched what I was feeling in that moment, and I just connected with them instantly. And even seeing the cover of a sunny landscape with sunflowers, I remember taking those long walks around dusk time in the summer when it was really sunny and hot, and just this scenery was totally what I saw. It was a great introduction to this band. I have since collected all their other albums. They are fantastic. Everything they do is phenomenal. So if you're looking for a place to start with the Stone Temple Pilots, highly recommend just checking out the Greatest Hits, and if you like what you hear, just eventually collect all the albums, give them all a listen. Every song on here is fantastic. You cannot go wrong with them.
And I feel the time's a ways to go. So where you go into tomorrow, and I see that these are lies to come. So would you even care?
The next album I have here, I have Dragonforce. I technically got into this particular album in 8th grade. Around that time, I was super into the song Freebird, and I would go out of my way telling people that it was the best guitar solo of all time. And I remember I had a friend who sent me a link to the music video of Through the Fire and Flames saying, "This guitar solo is far superior to Freebird." I don't really think I wanted to admit at the time that it was better, but I knew deep down that it was a better song. Although to this day, I still like Freebird's guitar solo a lot more. It was a solo that changed my life and really made me look at rock music in a different way. When this album came out, Through the Fire and Flames was taking the world by storm, and it got featured on Guitar Hero 3, being known as one of the hardest songs ever. And I remember back in those days, it was a thing to be able to play that song on expert mode, and people on YouTube would post videos of themselves playing it, trying to full combo it, and just basically show off their talent with the game. Aside from the video game aspect of it, this is actually a really cool album. Power and speed metal isn't really a subgenre of metal I really look at. Sometimes it can be really corny, or sometimes it can just be really lame. But this album, I think, made me appreciate it a lot more. I found that it was really melodic and epic, and the productions involved with the making of these songs were just really good. And Through the Fire and Flames isn't the only good song off this album. Revolution Death Squad was great, Storming the Burning Field, Operation Ground and Pound, that was another great one, and Cry for Eternity. Yeah, just a lot of these songs were solid.
Cry far away as we reach for the day, lasting our way from the punishment and the pain.
I think Dragonforce is still going to this day. They have a new vocalist, but the key guitarists in the band are still there, still creating mind-blowing guitar solos. If you've not heard of this band, this is the album to check out, and if you like what you hear, check out the rest of their stuff. I've heard some of their older albums, and I like them, but I think this one is easily the best one that they've done.
Shine out, sign of the burning sun, into the face of the evil one. Nowhere to hide now, we're on the run, right before your eyes.
The next album I have here, this is Breaking Benjamin's Phobia. Now, as I may have mentioned before, I was a mopey and angsty little teenager, especially sophomore and junior year. I had a lot of emotions, and I just didn't know how to handle them. So in turn, I started listening to a lot of bands that just created depressing sounding music. Bands like Hurt and Red and Breaking Benjamin.
Why give up? Why give in? It's not enough. It never ends. So I will go on until the end.
Bands like these always have albums where some of the songs are just showing off how badass they are. They have some softer songs, they have some bittersweet, some sad songs. But this album was just all heavy and dark and just sad songs. And I connected with every single song on here. Diary of Jane, Breath, You, Until the End, Evil Angel, Dance with the Devil. Jesus, this was one of my go-to albums when I was feeling down. But despite the cheesy darkness of albums like these, they really mean a lot to me. I can't imagine me getting through all the emotions that were going on without listening to music like this. It was an escape, it was catharsis, but I think more importantly is it was relief. Hearing somebody sing songs with lyrics that I could relate to just made me not feel alone. And every time I listened to this album, I would feel more sane and feel better, and just not feel like I wasn't the only one going through what I was going through. Of course, now that I'm an adult, I realize that yeah, everybody went through those emotions, but they just handled them in different ways. But I digress. This album, to this day, to me, is great. No matter what people say about Breaking Benjamin or what have you, this is an amazing album. I love it. It's a great cover, too, and just looking at it, I'm gonna have to go and listen to it. So when I'm done here, I'm re-listening to this album.
You take the breath right here. You left the
last album I have here, I have the Deftones' very first album, Adrenaline. This was the very first Deftones album I ever got into. I distinctly remember the first song I ever heard off this was 7 Words. Back in the day, I used to be a huge weeaboo, and there used to be this series online called AMV Hell, which basically took a bunch of different anime and incorporated all kinds of different music to match whatever was going on in the anime.
There's a lady who's sure all it glitters is gold, and she's buying the stairway to heaven.
One of the anime I was really into was Fooly Cooly, and amongst all the videos that appeared in AMV Hell, there was a Fooly Cooly 7 Words mashup, and hearing that song, I was immediately interested.
I think that you made it up. I think that your mind is gone. I think you should have
I may have actually listened to only a handful of tracks that were available on YouTube at the time before actually getting this album. Never before had I ever heard heavy music where people were rapping in it too. Looking at the track list now, I remember 7 Words, Bored, and Engine Number 9 were the songs that I listened to.
I get bored.
So I remember riding my bike over to the record store in my hometown and buying this album, and when I rode my bike home, I had it tucked in my pocket, and I remember riding along, and my bike at some point got caught on some vines, and I fell over the handlebars on my ass in front of so many people. And I remember distinctly falling, but trying to fall so I wouldn't fall on the album that I just bought because I really wanted to go and listen to it. Thankfully, I was okay. I basically jumped up immediately and got back on the bike and started riding because I was so embarrassed. But I got home with this album safely, and it's now one of the oldest things that I have in my collection. If you have not heard of the Deftones, you should absolutely check them out. They are making metal music that is unlike anything that has been ever made. This one is a little old and it strays into nu metal territory, but even in that time, this is so much different from bands like Korn and Limp Bizkit and whatever other nu metal band you could think of. Adrenaline by the Deftones, fantastic album, great tracks on here, and it's just good. Alright, the last album I have here today, I have System of a Down's Toxicity. So I kinda lied when I said that these are albums that impacted me in high school, because this is an album that impacted me when I was in 6th grade. System of a Down, I think, is the very first metal band that I ever got into. And I don't want to hear people saying that System of a Down isn't metal, or they're punk, or they're nu metal, or whatever. Basically what I'm getting at is they were the first really heavy modern band that I had ever heard and was super into. My best friend at the time had an older brother who showed him a lot of cool things, including music, shows, and whatever. So he was already listening to songs off of this album as well as songs off the band's album Mesmerize, but he shared those with me, and in turn I became super into System. And even going back to that anime Fooly Cooly, I remember he and I watching an AMV where they took clips from Fooly Cooly and incorporated it with the song Chop Suey. To this day, it's one of the best AMVs I've ever seen. But we used to listen to songs like Chop Suey, Bounce, Science, and BYOB all the time. Eventually, I saved up my allowance and purchased this album by myself. This might in fact be the very first album I ever bought with my own money. And to this day, I think it's an incredible album. System of a Down's music is so good. They came out when nu metal was a thing, so unfortunately they became lumped in with all those bands, but they were way ahead of the curve. Politically charged lyrics, heavy sounds, raw anger and emotion. It was unbelievable. If you have not listened to this band, please check them out. Start with this album and then just listen to everything else they've done. Every album they've done is fantastic. I hope in the near future we get another System album. It's been a long time waiting. We'll see what happens, but until then, beautiful record, so good, and fantastic band.
Eating seeds is a pastime activity. The toxicity of our city, Nobody on the world!
Alrighty then, internets, that does it for me. Hey, if you have any bands or albums you want me to check out, leave a comment down below, and if I like it, maybe I'll include it in another vlog. Also, if you like this video, be sure to hit that subscribe button. It shows the support, and I'll love your face for it. And you can also follow me on Instagram for more music. I post a new album on there every single day, talk a little bit about it, and it gives you a little bit of insight of what's in my collection. So thank you all for watching this week's vlog. This is Olin from What I'm Listening To, signing out. Goodbye.
Oh, I forgot to hit stop.
Ways I can't think of the future.